Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Stephen Sully study. I'm at Woodbury House once again, and I'm following this art series that I'm doing. If you've been following my content and watching the videos, I've interviewed some key street artists from New York recently, and also some art dealers and art let's say affiliates to Richard Hamilton's market. How we're evolving it now, we're speaking to British contemporary street artists, and the guy in front of me is a guy goes by the name of Remi Rough. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for coming on board.
Very well.
So this when was it? 2018? I think we got connected. I know it was more so with my business partner Mike.
Yeah.
We were doing a show for Mr. Christopher Ellis Days. I think that went pretty well, that particular show. I think he only had done one show previous in London a few years back, and we were quite fortunate enough to come up with the idea of doing two murals. Well, he'd done two murals for the project, one in Shoreditch and also one just around the corner in Soho by the Supreme store. And it was really, really cool. You know, there was a lot of buzz around there. We got into really good publications, and I just like his work. I think he's a very, very cool guy. And what made sense for us is because most of our efforts have been concentrated on the Richard Hamilton market. He was actually Richard Hamilton's tenant. And that story kind of evolved, because what we try and do here at Woodbury House is tell a story. It's not just about jumping from one artist to another, one genre to another, because for me that doesn't make any sense. I like to connect the dots. And part of the reason why I wanted to interview you is because I feel like those dots are sort of connecting with you. Obviously you came to the Days event, and you just recently just told me that you're good friends with Crash.
Both Crash and Days.
Yeah.
I mean, I've known Crash since 2012, I think. Or maybe 13. But obviously I've known him since I bought Subway Art. My mum bought me Subway Art when I was a kid. But he bought a painting off me, but I didn't know it was him at the time. And he bought this painting, and my assistant sent it off, and she dealt with it, and it was all cool. And then he emailed me, this guy, John Matos, emailed me again. He's like, "Oh, hi, I'd like to get another piece off you. I want a serigraph or a print." And he sent it from a different email, and it was crash1 at AOL. What is crash1 email? And I was like, Crash? John Matt? I was like, no, it can't be him. And then I realised it was him, so I emailed him. I was like, dude, I'm not going to sell you a serigraph. Let's do a swap. So we did a swap. Then he asked me if I wanted to do a collaboration show with him, which we did in 2014 at a gallery called Dorian Gray Gallery.
Yeah, I know it.
East Side.
Yeah, I know it really well.
And so we had like 3 solo pieces each, and then there's probably 12 pieces that we collaborated on. And so he sent me a bunch of pieces through the post. I sent him a bunch of pieces, and we just worked on them. And it's quite a nice synergy. And then he signed me to his gallery, Woolworks, and I've done a couple of shows with them at Woolworks. Last one was 2019, October. And then obviously I know Days just from being in New York and being in the studio with them.
Yeah. Cool.
Hanging out with them quite a bit, so I've got good friends with both of them.
Good. So I don't want to jump the gun because there's so much stuff I want to talk about in and around, what you're just talking about just there. I like to, get to know the artist's background, because as well as talking about your art, and and your take on the art market and where you see it heading, and also your collaborations and stuff, from a, let's say, entrepreneurial kind of creativity point of view, how did you start in art? What's your background, and when did you decide that was the route you were going to go down?
So I guess, I grew up in London. I was born in Guy's Hospital in London Bridge, and I don't think I've ever lived, other than a little stint in Paris for a year and a half, I've never lived that far away from where I was born, to be honest. As a child, I was obsessed with drawing and painting, and I was always had like markers or pens or pencils or paints in my hands. And as I went through school, also still in South London, my careers teachers, if you will, were trying to push me into sort of the graphic design world. And whilst that was all going on, it's like 1985, so I'd been doing graffiti for about a year. I started in 84. you know, it's quite a weird, tumultuous time because it was like Thatcherite Britain. So it was very, I guess it was very uptight from a teenager's perspective, you know, to be, there wasn't opportunity. There were not things to do. There was not the money to you know, funnel into young people at that point. So graffiti for me was like an outlet. It was a way of connecting with peers and similar minds. And I met, you know, so many people through that network. But I think for me, I was always into the art. I wanted to create art. I didn't want to just, you know, like write my name on stuff. I did that, of course, it's part and parcel of what it is. But I guess I just started on that journey. I had a short stint in art school, which I didn't really take to. And then I just went and did it. I just got on with it.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned art school there. It's something I always like to ask artists. So is art creativity, can it be taught? Is it just something you have naturally?
I think it can be taught. I think you can. So I've got a friend, very good friend, brilliant artist called Charlie Peters, and she's actually the head of course at UAL. And, you know, you can teach the business of art, you can teach the aesthetics of art, you can teach the history of art. You can't teach someone to draw if they don't have a natural ability. But then, you know, there's people who are brilliant artists who probably can't draw, who do crazy stuff that I love, you know. Can't think of someone off the top of my head, but I mean, there's, you know, like with some of my favourite artists that I've kind of really adhered to in the past few years, people like Kazimir Malevich, Van Doesburg, you know, the Suprematists, that kind of Russian constructivist painting era, which is something I discovered post-graffiti. So, you know, it's kind of late in life. You know, there's a lot of talk about how, you know, people say Tracy Emin can't draw. I love Tracy Emin's drawings. But I don't think you can teach someone to make art. You can give them the confidence, you can give them the tools and the ability to go and make it. But yeah, I don't know. It's a hard question. Because
there's like two elements to it. You could literally be that person that can pick up a brush or a pen or a pencil and go to work on a canvas or a piece of paper or even on the streets.
Yeah.
That's what people kind of imagine what an artist is like. But then you've got the other side of it when they can direct with their kind of vision to how certain art is going to be, and they can employ other people to do it. I mean, I've heard that certain artists do that. And some people may agree with that, some people may not agree with that, but the facts are, I mean, Jeff Koons, or let's say a Damien Hirst, he hasn't got a great white shark out the sea himself with his bare hands and put it into a box, you know.
He might have. I've got an interesting Hirst story, actually. About 9 years ago, I got a call from her studio saying, could you come in for a meeting? And luckily it's in Peckham, so it's quite near where I live. So I walked into this huge, massive studio, and then walked through into another massive studio. They're like big warehouses, and they basically just knocked them all through. I think it's 3 of them. And we went into this great big room, which was full of coffin freezers, full of butterflies, like hundreds and hundreds of thousands. And they had these couple of young kids kind of gluing the butterflies all concentrically in circles on these massive, like, you know, 2 meter by 2 meter canvases. And they asked if I could paint a grid, a meter by a meter, with a grid inside it, without any snags, with tape, you know, like, I said, yeah, sure. Like, can you do one? So they gave me some paint, gave me some tape. I said, look, this isn't the best tape, you know, I need yellow tape. Went out, got me yellow tape. I did this grid. They looked at it, they photographed it, they sent it to somebody, and then they said, okay, you got the job. I'm like, to do what? And then they got me into the Tate when he had his big show, and I did an 8 meter by 4 meter. Actually, sorry, I did 2 8 meter by 4 meter walls with these blue grids. It took weeks.
Beautiful.
I had a couple of other people helping me, but
yeah. So you said about the Tate there, because I've done my homework, and I know you spoke at the Tate back in 2008. There was a street art sort of show or convention going on there.
Yeah. So that was interesting. Basically, I saw, I saw an article on one of the news sites about Tate, and it's like Tate doing street art finally, and I saw the list of artists. There was an Italian, 2 Brazilians, a Frenchman, 2 Americans. And I thought, there's no Brits. I just thought, I don't understand that. Why would you? So many amazing British artists. I don't really care who it is. And so I found out who was curating the show, and it was a guy called Cedar Lewison, and I found his emailed him and said, love what you're doing, great idea, fantastic, but I think you need a British artist. I'm not suggesting me, I could suggest 20 amazing artists that could do it. And I wrote down 5 just to, for him to look at. Anyway, so he got in touch and said, look, I'm trying to introduce these artists to Britain, not British artists to Britain, which is, whatever. But then he asked, would you come and be part of the Talks program? So I thought I should, because if I don't, then there's no representation. And so I did.
It's good for, let's say, your profile and your CV to say you've spoken at the Tate.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of people there?
It was packed for the 300 people, which is all you can get into the Star Auditorium, and they turned people away. I think they turned people away for every talk from that program.
Oh.
And they had Black Larat was in the same, so he was talking the same day as me. They had Raphael Shachter, who's an academic. He writes a lot about street art and graffiti art. A guy called Tristan Manco, who works with Banksy. Loads of people. But they wanted me to talk about the history of street art. I was like, I don't really know about the history of street art. So I'm a graffiti writer. So I talked to them about that. And I did like a little kind of presentation on what I know and how I've seen this sort of thing evolve and grow.
Yeah. So again, going back to like a little bit of your background and doing some homework on you, is it fair to say it was roughly about 96, 98 where you started converting and you started working with the galleries?
I actually did my first gallery show in 89.
89, okay.
Yeah, but I wasn't really making studio work. I wouldn't show you what I did for that show. It's terrible. But I think, probably late 90s, I started transitioning into doing some sort of key things. I was traveling a lot. I was going to Paris a lot at that time. Yeah. Hooking up with people like John One, who's a good friend of mine who's in Paris. And just connecting. And I think the interesting thing about graffiti art is it was the first social media. So I was in touch with people.
That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, I was in touch with people in LA. Risk in LA was, we were writing to each other in 89, 90. And you'd like write a letter, you'd put photos in, you'd post it out, and then you'd sit there and you'd wait for something to fall out the letterbox. And that that was going on for a few years. I was writing to Phase 2 in New York. I had huge connections all over the world, and that there was no internet even at this point. So the only way you could connect was through writing letters, or phone calls. And I couldn't afford to phone the States or France, so I was writing letters.
So, like, I interviewed, as you will know, Out Diaz recently, Cope 2, Crash. I've interviewed Days, a few photographers from back in New York, and what I got from Cope 2 is the reason why he started on the streets of New York predominantly is, one, to express his creativity, but to almost take over a train line because it was a form of advertisement. It kind of connects to what you're saying about social media. He got to be known as a guy who was controlling that tube or underground line because he was dubbing it, tagging it, etc. And when he got known, kind of locally famous, then the opportunity started manifesting off the back end of it. Was it the same with you? Was you trying to like advertise yourself so opportunities could be born, or was you just expressing your creativity?
I don't think it was the same. People always ask me what the difference between street art and graffiti art is. And there's a really good paper actually that an artist called Askew from New Zealand wrote on this.
Okay.
It's something graffiti artists get asked a lot. Basically, what I tell people is they're very different languages. When we started graffiti, we didn't do it for anyone to appreciate, for anyone to connect with. We didn't really care if they could read it. We didn't care if they could understand it or connect with it. It was a language that we had that could integrate us with other people who were using the same language. Street art it's a visual language, but it's not coded. It's for everyone. It's more for the people who are walking past a piece of street art than it is for other street artists. It's not for other artists.
Yeah.
It's for the general public. So it's still a communicative tool, but it's communicating something completely different. There's no guarded sort of cloak behind it. There's no kind of secret code or coded language. It just is there for people to enjoy or to not enjoy. So very different. And I always use the analogy. It's kind of like a little bit like, if you have like someone who's in a rock band and knows all the major chords and just bashes it out, or someone like Jose Gonzalez, who's like a master guitar player who can, down tune his guitar and play that instrument like no one else can. Very different. They're very different languages, I think.
Okay.
But it's like, they just get kind of blocked into the same thing.
Yeah. Well, it was like Hambleton and some of his affiliates, his predecessors, Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring, they started converting the name of graffiti or street art into public art.
Yeah.
Which I love that spin on it. I think that's a really, really good way of looking at it.
Well, I think one of the most important, for me, artists out of New York is John Fechner. I don't know if you know John Fechner.
Not familiar.
So exactly same era as Hambleton and Haring. You've probably seen a very famous picture of Ronald Reagan on the campaign trail, and there's the letters behind him on the Bronx all burnt out. It says decay. Don't know if you've ever seen that photo.
Maybe if I saw it, I would recognise it.
Very famous. And he wasn't even president. He was on the campaign trail, and he was trying to, he's in the Bronx. We're gonna hook you up, sort you out. And it's a very interesting film called A Decade of Fire, which is all about the Bronx burning.
Wow.
And how they blamed the people who lived there, and it wasn't the people who lived there. It's a very they basically destroyed the Bronx and tried to destroy the people in it. And John Fechner was, and still is, an incredible artist who was dealing with the social element of what was going on in the Bronx at that time, and still now as well. Very good friend of mine, and a very underrated and misrepresented artist from that era of New York.
Right, interesting.
In my mind, like literally, he is the godfather of street art.
Really? Okay. Because that saying is what they called Hambleton, actually, the godfather of street art. It's been used a few times by New York Times. Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to need to check that guy out, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, very, exactly the same era. I'm sure they knew each other.
What was the style like in comparison?
He was a lot of it is lettering based.
Okay.
I've got an original photo he sent me, which is dated 1979, and it's a Greyhound bus going over a bridge in New York. But he wrote "Wheels over Indian Trails." Wow. And the whole idea is that this is Native American land. You can put wheels on it, but it's still Native American land. And that's the kind of social commentary he was trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And he's still making that work to this day, and he's in his 60s, and he's still killing it. He's amazing.
That's great. So like Jean-Michel Basquiat, Keith Haring, and all these great artists who were born from that time, and they've paved the way for so many other artists, and they've inspired so many people, not just in the art community, but in fashion and all kinds of different elements of life. Looking at the investment side of things, I mean, their pieces now are going for tens of millions of dollars. As Jean-Michel Basquiat, as you well know, in 2017 went for 110.5 million. Now, if I'm speaking to a business person or an investor, that conversation is quite, in tune with their mindset, because their business, they're in things to make money, maybe to enjoy it as well, but predominantly they buy things to make money. But when I like to ask the same sort of questions to artists. How do you feel about that? Because as an artist, you're there as a creator. But is there another side of your work that you think is the investment side of things? Do you have like investors come to you and ask to buy your work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the business of art.
Mm.
I've got the sort of key gallery I work with is based in northern Italy, in a town called Trento.
Okay.
I also work with, don't know if you know Magda Danis in Paris. It's a great gallery. It's got Paris, Shanghai. And, I've built my work, my price points, my market up over the last few years. It's gone into some serious collections. It's in, very non-serious collections. So it's important to me. I understand it. It's not the be all and end all of everything I do. But I think you have to be very aware of the business of art. And if you're not, I think you're very naive. And I know a lot of artists who are very astute on the business of art. I know a couple who they just want to make art. They don't care at all. They don't care, about remuneration. They don't care about price points or market. And that's amazing. And that's great if you can live like that. But the thing is, as things grow, you have to kind of understand how that business can grow. And I think that's been very important for me the last few years. I guess especially when you're suddenly asked to do museum shows and shows that have a certain level of stature that you kind of need to really think about, like what you do after that and where you go after that, and who you work with after that. I always think that in the art world you can only go forward, you can never go backwards, which can be difficult. It can be very difficult to maintain a sort of clear path in the art world. Touch wood. I've been quite lucky, and I've managed to kind of maintain my trajectory in the way I'm happy with.
Yeah.
It's also I think with what I do, what I'm part of, I think it's quite important, and I think a lot of people don't get that. It's the only art form ever created by and taken forward by children.
Right.
Only art movement. Nothing else has that. And I think there will be a point in time where the art historians will fully understand that, fully engage with that. I don't think they have yet.
I know you've done shows in Hong Kong. You've done it in obviously America, Paris, and obviously a few other places. As your career moves on and it becomes a bit more global, you're doing work in different parts of the world. If you can think about when you first converted from, let's say, the streets of London or wherever you're doing your work into more galleries, and you started on a certain price point, how do you know as an artist when to incrementally increase those prices?
Oh, I didn't know that until a long time, until I started working with people who understood that better than I understood that and kind of helped me understand that. This guy, I guess some of the galleries I've worked with, like Spearstra in Switzerland, has been quite pivotal in helping me with that. And it's just knowing your worth. Like every year, you're making new work, and so every year you've made new work. There's work that you made in '92 that's now a year older. So you're pulling apart your career. It's like elastic, slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly. And that work increases in value because it's older. It becomes more valuable. It becomes more fragile. It becomes more delicate. It becomes more unobtainable. Stuff that's in collections, that's still increasing in value. Just because someone's bought it doesn't mean the value's just flattened out, doesn't exist anymore. The value goes up. It depends who acquires pieces, who buys pieces, where they go.
Yeah.
So I think it's I think the thing with art is there's no easy answer, and it's it's like complete. It's like being in a Wild West film. It's like you can do what you want and hopefully get away with it.
Yeah.
Or not.
Yeah.
But what I think is interesting about being in the art world is when you see artists who really understand what it is they're doing and how they want to do it, and they're very focused. I'm not a fan of Damien Hirst's work, but as a businessman, I think he's brilliant and he's very clever. And there are other artists that I think are fantastically clever with the way they do the business of art. Ian Davenport, I don't know if you know his work. I think he's a brilliant art businessman and a brilliant artist. So it's interesting. You come to learn a lot more. I'm 50 this year, so I'm at a stage in my life where I'm still learning stuff, I guess.
Yeah. I don't think that ever probably ends, does it?
Never, hopefully. It'd be sad if it does.
Funny enough, yesterday, me and my business partner, Joseph, I was talking about this in the car on the way back from training. We, excuse the pun, but, you are starting with a blank canvas, so to speak, in regards to how to control, or some people may call it, not my words, but I've heard people reference it as manipulate or influence the market or whatever. You obviously have your products, but then you have the way of purporting it to the world. So doing the global shows if you can, working with the right publications, trying to be with the right galleries or art agencies, art houses. Museums is obviously a very good thing. Richard Hamilton had in 2017 the MoMA put one of his pieces into the permanent collection. I know Christopher Ellis Days is obviously a part of that. So is Basquiat and so many other great artists. This year in Germany, there's going to be a solo exhibition in a solo museum show for Hamilton. So I know these kind of things, even though I've only been in art for 7 years now. I'm 35 years of age and I'm still a pup in this industry. I'm learning that there are certain things that stimulate the artist market. But also, this is the next part I want to get onto, is collaborations. I think they're so important. Cope 2, Crash, Futura, Ramo Z, a lot of them have collaborated with some household names and big brands. Next door, actually, I've got hanging up on the side a Converse shoe that Futura done, which I got from Collect Store in Paris. I had to wait online, and I was one of the lucky people that got through that telephone line and ended up buying a pair of these sneakers, which are very, very cool. I've only worn them 2 or 3 times, and they're a bit of art to me now. How important is it, do you believe, collaborations, maybe not with other artists, but in different sectors? How important is that?
I think it's, as someone who's just done a quite major collaboration with Hey Club and David Beckham, I think those kind of projects help art move forward. There's not a lot of money in helping the arts at any kind of ground level. Like when you're signed to a big gallery and they're selling your work, that's fine. But there's this whole grey area of artists that miss out on showing work, selling work, and they're in a constant state of hustle, which some manage really well. But when a gig comes along and you can do it the way you want to do it, and be free with your style of work and the ideas you've got, I don't think there's a problem with that. Like art has always been something that the world of marketing and world of brands has jumped on, or the world of fashion has jumped. Futura has been doing it. God, Lenny's been doing it since the dawn of time. Like I remember, he started his own company. He had Recon in the 90s with Stash, and I used to go to New York and I used to go to the store there and get bits and bobs off them. And I think the brand collaborations can be really, really good now. And I think interestingly, I think brands look for different artists to work with now.
Yeah,
and not just working with the same sort of top tier artists. But even with Futura, he was doing like all the artwork for Mowax Records in sort of 90s and 2000s, which pushed him out there. It kind of rebranded him, because I think he was at a stage in his career where New York was quite a tough place to sell work, and a lot of those guys, Crash, Days, all their business of art was going on in Europe at that point, in Holland, in Paris, and occasionally in London. But New York kind of came back into it a little bit after that. It's always the same. It's like me. I'm more successful abroad than I am here, probably.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All the galleries I work with abroad, I don't work with a gallery in London. So
Oh, right.
I used to work with Scream Gallery.
Okay.
Jamie Woods.
Mm-hmm.
Until they closed.
This kind of goes back to what we were talking about art, but then the business side of art. And who is it? One of my favourite artists is George Condo, and I think I think his work is incredible. It's always really interesting. I can never get bored of looking at his art. I think it's quite scary, some of it, and it's just cool. I just really like it. But I know he's done the front cover of, I think it was Travis Scott's album, or one of his I think it was one of his EPs, and then there was he done one for Kanye West. And when now that I'm in art, it's clearly a project because it's fun, but also it's brand building. You're building your brand. You're crossing over into different demographics, and I think that helps. Let's say the investment side of your art, but as well as reaching new collectors who may may never have been interesting you up before, but now because you've collaborated with, let's say, a rapper or someone in music, it suddenly opens up the doors for many other opportunities. So with what you've done, for the audience who might not be aware, Hain, is it? Hake. Is a whiskey, correct? Yeah, yeah. So how did that come about? And you said off air you met David Beckham because of it. Yeah. How did that all come about?
Well, so they saw my work, and Hey Club were doing a series of artist bottles, and they'd done Deface, a guy called Bradley Theodore.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's represented by another gallery just down the road.
Maddox.
Yeah.
Gallery, yeah. And so they'd done Deface, they did Bradley Theodore. I'd actually spoken to them before that, and just timings didn't work because I had quite an important show in Italy in September. So we agreed to do the collaboration this side of, the new year. So we worked quite a long time on it. I think it's one of those things that I'm always very careful how and what I step into. I always look, do my research. I think you have to be careful, when you're slightly in any sort of public eye, even as an artist, it's very easy to get pulled down if you do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing. And so I looked into, they seem quite an ethical company. It's owned by a big umbrella company called Diageo. And, it was all quite exciting. And they wanted to let me do absolutely whatever I wanted to do. There was no kind of rules and regs, which is quite rare.
Of course, yeah.
And so we went through a stage of kind of, doing the bottles and getting sort of proofs done and seeing what worked and what didn't work. And then launched it a couple of weeks ago now. And they sold out pretty quick, which was good.
How many bottles? 1,000. And how much is a typical bottle of the whiskey?
I don't know. 20-something quid?
Yeah. And how much was... So how much...
They were 40 quid.
Oh, right.
I think they were just a tiny little bit more.
Yeah.
So it's, again, it's an affordable... It's kind of like why Coles does toys. And, it's an affordable entry point into owning and collecting, making your home look beautiful or whatever, And likewise, I've got so much art in my house. It's like untrue. We've got all sorts. We've got Bridget Riley, we've got Anish Kapoor, we've got graffiti artists like Carlos Mayer, Augustine Coffey, Shock One, Pose, all sorts.
When I saw the design of the bottle, I thought, you know what, it's a match made in heaven, because it was quite fitting, because their colour of their bottle anyway is blue, and I know you've used kind of them deep blues in your artwork before, so I think that's special. They have these cool
lines on the side. A lot of people think that I got them to put the lines on the side. The only thing I really wanted to do, which we couldn't do, just because we didn't have the time, so I wanted, because I use a lot of pink in my work. I use this kind of like neon pink. So I wanted to do a pink lid, but the lead time on that, like, you need months and months and months, so we didn't have time to do that.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe round 2 then you might be able to do it. Who knows?
You never know.
What was David Beckham like to meet? Because to me...
I haven't actually met him.
Okay.
No, so I haven't actually met him.
Okay.
Just to clear that up.
Cool.
It's all... It's complicated because, there's the PR team and then there's the team. But, I haven't actually met him. But he smells really nice.
Right. He's one of the coolest guys anyway. Certainly from the UK, and it seems like everything he touches almost seems to go well, and it must have been quite a cool thing, and to get recognised as an artist, to collaborate with one of his companies.
It is. I think what's nice is that you just, when people appreciate what you do on any level, it's really nice. You get kind of it's quite hard, especially in the last year. It's hard to know if anything you do kind of like gets out to the sort of broader scale of things. And I'm forever, in my studio on my own working. And so when someone is appreciating something, it kind of gives you a bit of incentive to continue and to go on. And it has been a bizarre and tough year for a lot of artists. Which, most artists spend a lot of time on their own anyway, but I just mean from like a financial perspective.
Yeah.
It's been quite hard for a lot of people in the art world. Galleries as well, you know, still a lot of galleries closed down.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been horrendous. It's the only way I can put it.
The COVID has definitely changed a lot of things, and but I'm a believer. You know, let's say the people who are quite dynamic, versatile, people that are resourceful, tend to get through these times, and they become better individuals, organisations off the back end of it.
Yeah.
But I do believe that there is a silver lining with everything in life, and I think that, you know what, it's like when I spoke to Cope too, he had multiple different shows lined up. Then COVID hit and all lockdowns were imposed, and he literally thought, Jesus, how am I going to pay the bills? I've got a family to feed. But then he started getting people calling him, reaching out to him via social media, people they would never consider as street artists, collectors or investors, and they started buying his work because they were stockpiling street art works to preserve their money, because ISIS bonds, bank-based investments, they were diminishing because of the economy was going down. Did you have any experiences like that, or can you see why people would do that?
I don't know if I had any experiences like. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm kind of always in a position where we managed to sell work. Like I did a little release of small A5 paintings about 2-3 weeks ago. I was only, you know, they're all originals, but they're small A5 pieces, and they sold out in 24 hours. So, you know, we kind of always doing things like that. I did a print release with, do you know, Nelly Duff, Print Publishers?
No, I can't say. Okay.
I did that kind of late last year, and that sold out. So, I mean, I just kept working. It wasn't anything in particular.
Yeah.
It was just stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
Which was quite nice. But, yeah, I don't think there was any one particular thing. I don't think I was surprised by any kind of reach out. I guess I was quite surprised by the amount of support you get from people, which I think is really lovely.
Yeah, powerful.
And you see that through
and it's important.
Social media. Yeah, it is. And I you know, I like social media. I like using Instagram. It's a tool, you know. It's a tool to kind of share your work and have conversations and engage. I'm not sure it's like a selling point or a shop, you know. It's just, for me, it's engagement.
Yeah.
And I think that can lead through to other things. It's just how you do it, you know. I know artists who literally that's their living, you know. Instagram is how they make money, how they sell work. I'm not sure that's the case for me. It's a little bit different.
Okay.
But I mean, the weird thing is, I had this show in September in northern Italy, and they got in touch with us in April. It's a gallery called Kronos Gallery.
Okay.
And it's in a 16th century palazzo in Trento in northern Italy. And they got in touch with us. Just open this gallery. Really like you to be our inaugural artist, you know, for a show. And we were thinking, this is crazy. Like, northern Italy at that point was in a real mess.
Yeah.
But we had a few Zoom calls, and then we got to go out in July, and we went and met the people and saw the space. We're like, okay, which is cool. And then the show was in September, and it was really successful. I was quite surprised, just because of the state of the world, and I did it because I thought it's good to be doing something. It's good to be working. And it kind of went above my expectations, which was really nice.
Yeah. What we haven't spoke about, which I think is important, because I am a fan of your work. I really like it. I like how sort of minimal it is, and I think it's I just think it's fantastic. I think it's timeless. You know, I think it's going to be very, very cool and still in, regardless what era that we go into. I think it's something that people are going to look at and go, that is Remi Rough. You know, it's never going to be mistaken for anybody else's work. So for the viewers that maybe are not watching this but just listening to it on iTunes, describe your work and how did it start? How did you come up with that style?
I mean, I guess I was doing letters from 1984 until probably the late 90s, early 2000s, and I just felt that I was very limited with what I could do with writing my name. And I'd also grown up with whereas a lot of people have been into kind of like the kind of more traditionalist graffiti art through subway art or spray can art or, you know, books and magazines that they had, I was very intrigued by the more left field diaspora of people like, I guess, Futura, Ramosi, Dondi, and a few other people that probably aren't so known in the world. People like, I don't know if you know A1's work. He's a New York artist, trained painter from the 70s, 80s, lived in Paris for a long time, sadly not with us anymore. And I was very interested in their left field attitude and aesthetic, and it was kind of taking what they knew and what they'd grown up with and then going post with it. Like, you know, I really like the term post graffiti because I think post graffiti really explains the aesthetic and how it, you know, is maneuvered into something new. And I wasn't comfortable with the traditions of, you know, I always used to think this is a rebellious art form. Why are you putting rules and regulations? Like, you just like go out in the streets, paint what you want. You know, there's no rules. You've got to do it like this. You've got to have arrows. You've got to have 3D, carrot to there, carrot to there. And I just thought, I need to abstract. I need to fragment what I'm doing. And I started with the letters, and I just started breaking them down and simplifying them. I guess minimalizing them, even to the point where I think sort of 98, 99, I was only painting black letters, no colors, no outlines, no, just black, just literally sketching black letters on white or grey walls for a good period of time. And then, you know, that continued to kind of inform what I was doing in studio at that point. And then I guess, I don't know, I remember being, God, it must be 2000 or 99. There's a really important artist called Juice 126 who's from Birmingham, who's kind of like, you can describe him as, he's like the British version of Futura.
Okay.
Very important artist, very influential on a lot of people from the UK. And he and I were in the Tate Britain looking at the Jackson Pollock show, which was on. I think it's the last big Jackson Pollock show that was on in London. It's like 20 odd years ago. And there's a painting called 4 Fathom Deep, I think, and it's massive. It's a portrait size, and I just stood in front of it, and I just knew that this was what I wanted to do. I want to make art on scale that is mine and has my signature style, you know. And it's really important for me, I think, to just be original. And I've worked really hard to create what I think is my thing, my own thing. And keep evolving it, which I think is really important, because you just can't do the same painting for the rest of your life. You know, it's like you've got to do a show of 30 paintings. You know, you got to diversify and do different things.
Yeah,
you can't do the same 30 paintings again and again and again.
I was going to ask, so you're almost 50 now, and I've got to say, mate, you've kept yourself in really good condition. You do not look like you're about to turn 50. I can tell you that. But what inspires you now? You know, from a creativity point of view, like, how do you keep yourself that fire burning to think, you know, I need to push on, I need to evolve, I need to become.
I think it's having nice projects, like, you know, having shows, projects that keeps me on my toes. But I mean, I'm influenced by like so many things, like architecture. You know, I walk around London, I remember being in Detroit year before last, walking around Detroit, doing a big mural project there. There's some great architecture in Detroit, really great architecture. And even just like London, you know, like all the brutalist buildings, like, you know, the Barbican. It's like, London is awash with incredible architecture that people just walk past, pay no attention to whatsoever. There's a really interesting architect called Zaha Hadid, who she designed famously the swimming pool in the Olympic Park in West London. And she's really out there. She's passed away a few years ago, but her company still exists, and they still make incredible buildings, all kind of based on her aesthetic. And, you know, I love stuff like that. I love pushing the boundaries of creativity and pushing the boundaries of what's possible with architecture or with art. There's an artist I love called Katharina Gross, who's German. I just love her work. and she uses like spray guns to like spray huge washes of color. It looks like a mess, and she does museum shows, and it goes everywhere. And then they have to like clean it all up after, when they kind of put it back to normal. But I love that chaos. There's a beauty in the chaos of what she does. So many things inspire me. There's no, clear thing. It's like I'm always writing notes and I guess, that informs the kind of things I want to do and move into, because I don't just want to always be a painter. There's other things I want to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you obviously just launched the collaboration with David Beckham's company, High Club. What is next for you over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Collaborations, and what other type of work are you going to do? I know, for example, going back to Cope, I know he's done some figurines. He said it's not really his favourite thing to do, but he would do some. Figurine, like bears almost, and because obviously he's a street artist, so he predominantly does like the canvas works with his dubs on there and stuff. And Crash, who's obviously a very good friends with Cause has evolved into figurines and everything else. Can you see yourself going down that route, or are you going to keep more to what you know?
I've toyed with doing some sculpture, kind of like what I do on a canvas, but in a sort of 3-dimensional sense, maybe 3D printing. I've got I did a big project with an architect firm in Hong Kong called IDAS. They're one of the biggest architect firms in Hong Kong, massive. Mainly build like airports and stuff like that. And one of the architects there, who I've become quite good friends with, is a collector of mine, taught me how to use SketchUp to kind of design 3-dimensional maquettes. I guess. So I've got a little bit of skill with something like that. So that could be quite interesting. Over the next couple of years, I've got some quite big projects going on in Italy. And I'm trying to work towards hopefully doing a really major show in London, probably for 2022, which would be nice, because I haven't shown in London since, last solo show I had was 2015 with Screen Gallery.
Okay. And so if someone were to go to your social media or onto your website, what type of things could they expect to buy?
So I sold a piece last week to a collector who went through my online shop, and then I actually saw that he lived 2 streets away. So I was like, that's great. I'm not going to post. It will take me longer to walk to the post office than it will to walk to his house. So I messaged him and said, look, I'll walk this over. I live really close. So we've got butchers near me that I'm quite good friends with the guys in there. And he used to be with like the Ginger Pig in London Bridge, and he set his own thing up. And I took them one of the bottles of whiskey in as a kind of, like it's for you guys. And this collector had gone in there to buy some stuff and seen the bottle. Like, who did that? And so Lyle, who works in there, was like, this is Remi. He kind of comes in here quite a bit, lives locally. And then straight away he went on my site and bought something. And I dropped it round, and he said, I really love your understanding of colour. So hopefully when people go onto my social media, they will get their own understanding of colour and how colour can work. And maybe that's what they will get from it. But there's other things, composition, there's line, there's form.
And is it originals as well as limited editions on there?
Pretty much nearly everything I do are originals. I don't really do that much print stuff. I've done a little bit, and I do have a bit of a dalliance with it, but it's never been that big a thing for me. I think, making original work for people, I think is more important. It's that, you could just get bogged down in the world of multiples and prints. And, I've kind of seen that from the world of street art, and people just like bashing prints upon prints upon prints. It just doesn't appeal to me. So I don't mind, if people do it, it's cool. I have nothing against it. It's just not for me.
Yeah. And I know it's going to be like a very, very broad question, but obviously you've got your own goals, your own visions, and your own aspirations over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years and 10 years and beyond, whenever you decide to hang up the paintbrush, so to speak. But where do you see the art market going yourself? I mean, because you've quite clearly said that from the 80s you got inspiration from like all different types of things, and you know you were painting when there was no such thing as the internet, no such thing as social media, and that certainly had an influence not just on art but everybody's life. Where do you see things going over the next, you know, few decades from now? How do you see art evolving, and who do you see being a part of that market?
I think it's going to change quite drastically. I think the world of galleries.
Because we spoke as well, just to interject about this NFT,
NFT.
and I've seen a lot of people get very excited by it.
Yeah, I'm not discounting it on any level.
Yeah.
I think played well, it could really work. And I've seen, you know, it's not the most original prospect in the world. You know, like people have kind of done similar things before.
Because for the benefit of people listening, and then I'm not the best person to articulate it because I've not really researched it, but NFTs are a token to...
I've done a little tiny bit. Yeah, you kind of, it's like, it could be digital artwork, could even be a concept. You could buy a concept, but you'll get something to certify that you own this concept. I still don't know how it exactly works, but I do like the idea, and it could, you know, done in the right way. If you know, it's like if the token is something that's really cool and collectible, like in itself, that can be something. But I think the tangibility of art is slightly at risk here because we're in, you know, COVID land, and people are a little bit like, oh my God, what's next? What should we do? How can we, you know, continue? How can we make a living? My concern is that this is like the next big thing that everyone's going to kind of like jump into before it's really had a chance to grow. But then, you know, it's one of those things, if you miss the boat on it, you miss the boat. I don't know, it's tough. It's like, I'm quite happy to inform as much as I can myself on it and understand it. And there are, you know, there's things happening all the time. Like my wife this morning was telling me about Clubhouse, which has been going for quite a while, but has really started getting traction.
Started to catch fire, definitely.
Yeah, so she was explaining it to me. I'd never really heard of it.
We done our first Clubhouse room last week, and we're having a bit of a tutorial shortly in a moment about our next.
That's exactly what she was doing. She was in a room like that was a kind of a tutorial. So I think there's a lot of interesting things. I think the world of online is very interesting. It makes everyone accessible, which is fantastic. I don't know where the future lies with the physical gallery. The point is, though, people love to go and look at art. People love to see art and to experience it. And you can't experience it on a small screen.
You definitely can't,
the
no.
size of a matchbook.
But that's why it's a bit like, you know, with fashion. I've bought some stuff online, but it doesn't take the experience away from me personally to go into a shop and try something on and have that whole experience. I think that's quite important, and maybe that may die out in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, but I don't think it's ready to die out just yet. And I think certainly from an art point of view, I mean, people are buying in virtual auctions. I mean, last year, a Jean-Michel Basquiat head got sold for $13 million. I think it broke the record in a virtual auction at Sotheby's, or maybe Christie's. I think it was Sotheby's. 400 million was raised in one night. So it does demonstrate that people do buy stuff virtually, but maybe that person has already bought a bunch of Basquiats and he understands what she understands what she's looking at.
Reputation, if you're buying something from Christie's or Sotheby's, you know they're going to have done their due diligence in knowing what that piece is and the state of that. So I'm, you know, it's kind of a bit of a different world. But that said, you know, like I sold 14 paintings last week that were £500 each, all online, just from, you know, putting them up on my social media within 24 hours. So a lot of people will buy things. I don't know what the price point is for how far people will go, or how, you know, I guess there's no price. People, you know, if they want it, people want something, and they can obtain it in a certain way, they'll get it that way.
Yeah.
But I just think, as far as physical galleries, I think I think it's quite a shame if the only galleries that we can go into are your White Cubes and your Gagosians and Tates, and because a lot of the kind of more indie galleries, let's face it, do the most interesting stuff because they can. Like Gagosian or White Cube, they don't sign people from the graffiti world because they don't fully understand it, and they probably don't understand the connectivity to the history of art and how important that is. I'm sure that will change one day, but to experience that, if you want to find like a really great artist who, I don't know, comes from the Midwest of America, that you've maybe seen a few things, done a few prints and posters, and suddenly he's doing a show in a small gallery in Denver, Colorado. You happen to be out there, you want to go and see it.
Yeah,
it's going to be so sad if you don't have that accessibility to affordable art, and art that isn't on blue chip, top tier kind of shelves.
Yeah. Any sort of advice that you've got to, let's say it was a younger version of you, you're looking down and you're kind of mentoring them, and they wanted to become a household name in the street art sector or just learn the craft. Is there any kind of, little pointers, little sound bites that you can give them?
I mean, be true to yourself. Make art that you want to make and that you think is original. I mean, people always say nothing's original, everything's been done before. I don't believe that. That's not true. That is not true on any level. Everything can be original. You can create something. There's infinitesimal options of what you can achieve and do in this world. And I do get, I get sometimes people who like copy my stuff and they like tag me in it. And it's quite sweet on one level, but then in another level, I'm like, what if suddenly they got like, 150,000 followers?
Yeah.
And then people think, that Remi guy's copying him. I don't know.
Well, is that whole argument of brainwash copy and Banksy? You've obviously seen that documentary.
Banksy created brainwash.
Yeah,
that was just creation. That was just a clever marketing ploy.
Yeah.
I always think with giving advice, the best advice to give is do what you love and love what you do. I always also think that if you give too much away, people will be careless with it, so you have to hold some things close and keep them to yourself. All right, good stuff. Remi, where can people find you? I'm on Instagram at Remi Rough, RemiRough, and my website is remirough.com. That's it, really. I have work in numerous places all across the world, quite like London. Got some murals in East Dulwich. Got a big one in King's Cross. Nice. It's a gift that keeps on giving. So yeah, it's out there. Good stuff. One more question. So you might have heard this from my other podcasts. I've got a catchphrase, which is be happy, never content. Yeah. If I was to ask you your interpretation of be happy, never content, what does that mean to you? Be happy, never content. I mean, I try and always be happy. I think it's nice to be kind. I think if you are happy, then contentness will come. But yeah, just be happy. That should be enough for everyone. Be kind and happy. Yeah, I support that. We all need a bit of kindness at the moment. We definitely do. Thank you very much for your time. Very welcome. This is going to be out on YouTube. It's going to be across all the social media channels. And like I said, this is part of an art series, so this is really, really important for us to connect with people like yourself and other affiliates. And like I said, this is not just about just doing a podcast with you. It's about, forging a relationship. So at some point we can start potentially working together and working on some very cool ideas and cool projects. And I think we're going to give a lot of value to our audience and also to our client base. You have to come around my studio one time. Definitely. I would love to do that. Thank you very much. Okay. Very welcome. Be happy, never content. Look out for this over the next few weeks, and please share, comment, save, and do all the good stuff. Thank you very much.